the wiper blades that last 2 times longer than any other blades. Michelin Endurance XT Silicone. Wiper blades last 2 times longer than other blades. Brian Westbrook played for a decade in the NFL, a multiple-time Pro Bowler. He was just talking to him during the break. He went to Wharton, Villanova and Wharton. So he's officially the smartest guy in this current conversation coming up. Brian Westbrook is now joining us live. Wharton. Who gets Wharton on their resume? God, guy, you Wharton guys, Lord.
You're just trying to make it work out here in this real world that we live in at this point. Retirement is not always the easy place to try to find a job, so trying to figure life out.
Well, congrats. It's incredible. So we were during the break, we were saying, and you have a business background, I believe in structures, so I tend to look at the NFL. What's your structure like and who's your quarterback? And that's how I pick my division winners. Philadelphia, I like their owner, I like their GM, I like their coach, and I like Wentz. But you know that city well. Villanova kid, you played for the Eagles. I wonder, you looked this morning, some think Wentz too many injuries, lost the right coaches, he's lost his confidence. Weigh in on Philadelphia. We're really, really early, and I'm hearing some Baylors on the Eagles right now. Where do you stand on them this morning?
Well, I saw an offensive team last week that put up 29 points against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I saw a team that doesn't have Deshaun Jackson, doesn't have Alshon Jeffrey, doesn't have Dallas Goedert, doesn't have their first-round pick Jalen Reagor, and really the only receiver that they had was a practice squad guy that they cut a couple times, got cut by different teams, and Travis Fulgham. And they were able to put up 29 points on a very good defense of the Steelers at Heinz Field. So I think, this football team has a ways to go. They don't have a bunch of talent. They're not as talented at the skill position like the Dallas Cowboys. But what I am seeing is a quarterback that struggled early on in the season with interceptions, bad reads, bad decisions, just errant throws. And over the last couple of weeks, and I'll probably say the last 6 quarters, I think Carson is starting to figure it out. He's using his legs a little bit more. You saw that in the 49ers game. He's able to get the ball in the right position. We saw that last week against the Steelers. I feel like he's starting to figure it out, and he struggled mightily at the very beginning of the season, but I think he's coming out of that just a bit. And once you get some more talent around him, once you get any of those guys that I named before back, I think it's going to give Carson an opportunity to exploit some holes in some defenses. Right now, they're just so ravaged by injury and those types of things. It's just hard to see how good of a team they really are because of the injuries.
I was saying in the break, Brian, that I watched the Giants and the Cowboys play this weekend, and I saw 2 rebuilding teams. We just all know the Giants are rebuilding. One had a good defense, one had a great offense. And I look at Dallas, and my theory behind rebuilding is if you go into a draft and at least half the units on your team need a playmaker, then you're rebuilding. I don't care if you acknowledge it. We know teams that aren't. Baltimore's not rebuilding. We know Kansas City, Green Bay, they're not. And we know New York is. But I look at Dallas. Offensive line's old. Defensive line's old. Linebackers are, to be honest, a little overpaid and overrated at this moment. They need a safety. They need another corner. Their tight end, they're not special. Outside of receiver and back, I got questions everywhere. Is it possible? I looked at the Giants in Dallas, Brian. They look like rebuilding teams to me. Am I wrong?
Well, you have to ask yourself this. Will Jerry Jones ever allow his team to be in a total rebuild? Would he ever allow his football team to say, you know what, we're tearing everything down. We're going to be irrelevant for a couple years, and then we're going to come back stronger. I don't see that happening. I think Jerry says we have 3 good wide receivers. We all know what they can do. We know what Zeke can do. We'll be serviceable at the quarterback position with Andy Dalton. Now we can find a way to get our defense not to be terrible. And what we've seen from their defense all season long is them getting dominated at the line of scrimmage, them showing a lack of urgency, a lack of toughness. They're just being lazy so many times on the defensive side of the ball. They're getting beat down the field. I mean, they have a bunch of holes on the defensive side of the ball, and they paid a lot of guys over there a lot of money as well. And so they shouldn't be at that bad. They shouldn't be rebuilding on the defensive side of the ball. But just as you mentioned, they have a lot of holes. They have to fill those holes. So I don't necessarily think that Dallas is in a total rebuild. I just think they have to sharpen their tools on the defensive side of the ball. It starts with effort. If they can show a little bit more effort, which I think they did this last week, I think they can win some games. But they're a long way from being one of the better teams in the NFC.
Brian Westbrook, 9 years, two-time Pro Bowler. I said this last night. There's 4 old quarterbacks in the league. 2 of them don't look like they can really take me to the place I want to be, Rivers and Breeze. 2 of them, Big Ben, Brady, can, but they're not as special as some of these young guys. So, I start looking around this league at quarterback, and Josh Allen is really good, really fast, and Lamar's really good, really fast, and oh my God, Joe Burrow's really good, and Justin Herbert's really good. And then you get a bunch of guys like Matt Ryan, and I'm like, Jimmy Garoppolo. So let's start with Garoppolo. This weekend, a mess. Was it injuries or just Jimmy G struggling? What did you see?
Well, I saw a quarterback that was struggling. I would initially think it was because of the injuries. He didn't seem like he could step into any throws. He didn't seem confident. I don't know how much practice time he got in the past week. He just didn't look confident in any of his throws. He didn't know how to pull the trigger and let the ball go. And then when he did step into it, a lot of his throws were sailing all over the place. And that's why he ends up getting pulled. When you're losing the amount of games that the 49ers have lost this year, and you're supposed to be a good team, sometimes when you're injured, you kind of force yourself to get back in there when you're really not ready to play. And I don't think Jimmy G was ready to play this past weekend, and that's why Kyle pulled him out of the game. He'll come back, but again, Jimmy G wasn't special last year. He had a great defense, and he had an offense that knew how to run the ball. And when you have the ability to run the ball on anybody, you can get some play-action passes going, and then the throws that you're making are to wide-open wide receivers and tight ends. And, of course, we know what George Kittle can do with yards after the catch. So when you're talking about an average quarterback to start, then you add injury to that. Without that dominant defense, you're seeing what you're seeing for the San Francisco 49ers, and it's not a very good sight.
I was just thinking as you were talking, it's funny, is that Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and Josh Allen, especially Herbert, is so good quickly, and Joe Burrow is so competent quickly, it makes me think if you're Miami, you put Tua in 3 weeks, and you give him 8-9 games, and he's just okay. Do you revisit quarterback in the NFL? Are you going to have Justin Fields? I mean, it's funny, Brian, but Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow are, boom, they can play, period. And I got 3 world-class, and the Dolphins, by the way, going to have Houston's first-round pick next year. They got 2 of their own picks, or they got 1 of their own and Houston. So they're going to have 2 top 10 picks potentially. What if Tua comes out? Is it ever happened that your rivals, the culture changes? There's so many special young guys. What if Tua comes in and plays 8 games and looks meh? Do you go get another guy?
I don't want to make Joy get her too upset here. It's talking about her Dolphins, but I think the answer is no. You got to give Tua an opportunity to get used to the league, and they've struggled a little bit with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but of course, when he struggles, he comes back even stronger and throws the ball. You have to give Tua an opportunity. You pick them, you draft them way too high to be able to say, he struggled at the end of the year, and now we're not going to go with him. Now we're going to move on. You've done that too many times in the past. At some point, you got to settle in and say, this is our guy, and we're going to go with him despite some early struggles. And there's not going to be a bunch of young quarterbacks that go out there and light the world up like Joe Burrow and Herbert. It doesn't happen every single year. Tua may be one of those guys. He may be one of those guys that gets better by sitting on the bench and watching and coming in his second year with all the practice reps as far as the offseason and OTAs. He's a much better quarterback. We never know. We won't really know until he gets that opportunity. But I don't give up on a quarterback after their first year. I think that would be foolish.
Yeah. Finally, Andy Dalton. Can you win a division with Andy Dalton at this point in his career?
Absolutely. You can win a division because we mentioned it earlier. You have all the weapons. The division is just bad. The NFC East is absolutely terrible. But more importantly, it's their schedule. It's the teams that they're going to play. And when you look at their schedule, you're talking about teams over 500 at this current point. They're only going to play 2 more of those teams. That's the Steelers and the Ravens. All the other teams that they're going to be facing, the Cowboys will be facing, are under 500. So, I mean, when you talk about what does he have to do? Well, he doesn't have to. All he has to do is not turn the ball over,
right,
hand the ball off to Zeke, make sure that the receivers touch it. And if he does that, I think that helps his defense out a little bit too. Get your running game going, get your defense off the field. And if you can do that, that helps them win football games. And the schedule dictates that they don't have a hard road in front of them.
Yeah, no, if he's a distributor, he's the point guard that passes, not shoots. You can win a lot of games with that receiving core and Zeke. Good stuff, Brian Westbrook. Love having you on, bud. Thanks again.
Thanks again. Take care, Colin.
Tristan Thompson before the end of the show talking about his buddy LeBron James smoking a cigar and feeling good about himself today. Check engine light comes on. Don't freak out. CarShield.com. A deductible may apply warranties when yours runs out. Joy Taylor with the news.
No.